Okay, here we go. Now, that way I'm in control of the room. No fuckers can come in here and start a bunch of shit with me because I'm done playing that shit. I've done this many, many times, and every fucking time I try to agree to something, here comes a bunch of fucking trolls in the room starting a bunch of shit. We're not doing that. So that's
Yeah,
why I'm
that's
in
fine.
control of the room. That's why I'm in control of the room. I don't care what you ask me. I don't give a fuck. But I want control of the room so I don't get interrupted by a bunch of fuckers coming in here starting shit with me. Right?
Well, how often does that happen, Vaughn? I don't.
Oh God. Oh God. Does it happen? Are you fucking high? Miss Parker, even G-Man and Vecco have allowed that to happen a couple of times. Now, G-Man, to his credit, stopped that shit, but it's happened every fucking time it's happened. Yeah, so we're not going to do that. We're going to have it where I'm in control of the room. And that way nobody fucking comes in here but me and you. And then you can ask whatever. I don't give a fuck what you ask. I care less. But I'm not letting no fuckers come in here except me and you. That's
That's
it.
fine.
Period.
No, that's perfectly fine. So, I had recently been made privy to like a court case or something like that, but I understand that anytime I hear something about VonHelton, which many people hear things about VonHelton, it may or may not be factual. So, what better way
Correct.
than come to the horse's mouth, so to speak, right?
Correct. Correct. That is
So,
very correct.
so
That
I
is
have
very
a
correct.
I have a new audience from a little different community. A lot of them are not very familiar with the man, the myth, the legend, the so-called the inspiration for the Punisher of all things. So, would you give kind of a quick rundown of your past exploits?
In what way? I mean, what do you mean? I mean, do you want me to
I
go all the
mean,
way back to years ago, or what do you want?
I
What
would way back.
way?
I mean, way back. I'm talking about when you were busting up pimps in Texas, pimp ring, human
Well,
trafficking.
there's a lot more to it than you'd have to go. To get to that point, you got to go way back before that point.
I
But
got time.
here, let me do it this way, okay? I have always been a very spiritual person. When I was a child, I saw this white entity. Christians would call it an angel, and I literally chased this entity through the house. And of course, when I got to the bathroom, it disappeared. And so I went back to my mom. I said, "Mom, what is this white entity that I chased through the house?" "Oh, that's an angel, honey." Typical Christian response.
Right, right.
And so, so I have always been surrounded by the supernatural. And I have always been, um, some would say, gifted, special, whatever. I was reading Shakespeare at age 5. Most 5-year olds are not reading Shakespeare. Most 5-year olds are pulling pigtails or climbing trees or
Eating
doing
dirt.
shit like that. So obviously I'm a bit, I'm cut from a different cloth, obviously.
Right, right.
um and that's where the 190 IQ comes in and all that good shit, which
Oh
of
yeah,
course,
you and
which
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you and John had a bit of a conversation
I've
about
had
the
a bit of a
IQ thing.
conversation with a lot of people about that because I have no reason to lie about that shit. I'm quite proud of that. Why the fuck would I lie about something that I'm proud of? Okay, that's stupid. But yeah, I did have a dust up with a bunch of people about that. Solar Marshall, John, numerous trolls. I don't give a fuck what anybody believes. I know what I've accomplished. I'm proud of what I've accomplished. And I want to remind everyone I scrubbed toilets to get to where I am.
Virtually
Okay.
of.
I wasn't born. Now, while it's true that my parents had money and they were very influential in their community, they never helped me. I did what I did myself, scrubbing toilets, cleaning cars. I was a detail man for a lot of Ford dealerships. Literally covered in mud and muck and shit to get where I am today. Okay, the gods have shown taken me back and shown me things in my past and stuff, and to their credit. But my parents never really they never really they never never lavished me with stuff and made it easy on
No
me.
special tutors, anything like that.
No, I think what it is, my dad being a Navy man and being ex-military, I think he wanted me to learn the hard way, how to be, and I'm actually grateful for that, because I think if I had been treated like a rich uppity up, I probably wouldn't be the man I am today.
Yeah,
I'd
because
probably be a snob.
you
I
have
would
some
probably.
innovations, don't you? There's the with not with architecture. I'm sorry, engineering. There were initial drafts or drawings of certain aircraft. I seem to
Right.
remember.
Well, we'll get into that in a minute, but the point I want to stress is that, I could have been a silver spoon, like an Elon Musk or a Donald Trump or some of these other people, but I wasn't. My parents intentionally made it to where that I wasn't that way. And a lot of people say, well, Von, what about the fact that your parents were Freemasons and stuff? And well, that's just one of those things. My father was Knights Templar, my mother was Eastern Star. And, I get a chuckle when people talk about the New World Order and Freemasonry and stuff and say that it's all a load of hooey. Well, my parents were not a load of hooey. They were real what they believed what they believed, and they did what they did. In fact, somewhere here in this house is my mom's big, humongous, multicolored Eastern Star. I haven't found it yet. I need to find it.
Oh wow.
So that's still here. But I mean, like I said, supernatural has always been around me. I can never be an atheist. I've seen way too much shit. I can never be an atheist ever.
Right, but to
And
the same token, you did have uh, a bit of a foot into Christianity until you eventually found eclectic paganism, I believe it's
correct,
called.
correct. I did. And obviously, being a researcher, an amateur historian, allowed me to seek out other religions of the world, but most importantly, to seek out the background of said religions and the background of certain historical events that heretofore I thought to be legitimate and were not legitimate. But the thing about it is, you said earlier about my involvement with NASA. Well, obviously, as somebody who is gifted, let's use that term, I did have conversations with NASA and Lockheed and Boeing and some of these other companies about, my ideas for a space superiority fighter aircraft. And I was getting nowhere with the normal businesses, so I finally went to NASA and I emailed them. Well, I didn't email them; there was no email, but I wrote them snail mail, and I wrote them, and I sent them a draft on graph paper of a prototype that I had been thinking about and working about. Now I didn't do the whole plane.
It was a rough schematic
It
of
was
a
a rough
fighter.
schematic, and I did do the hydraulics, and I did do the exterior design, the shape, and whatnot. But as far as the interior electronics, I didn't do that. Now my craft that I had designed would have two types of engines. It would have conventional jet engines that would allow the aircraft to get up to about 40,000 feet. Then once the aircraft got up to 40,000 feet, ion engines would kick in and push it the rest of the way out into space. Now, isn't it interesting that Virgin Galactic ended up doing the exact same thing
It's a
with their
coincidence.
White Knight? Coincidence? I think not. But I can't say for sure. I can't say that they stole the idea from me. But I just find it fascinating that Virgin Galactic's White Knight did the exact same thing that I proposed to NASA way back when I was 17 years old, 16, whatever the fuck I was.
Right.
I just find that fascinating, and we'll leave it at that.
Right, but so that didn't work out. So we're around late teens, and you did have some experience in the military. You kind of followed in your father's footsteps around that age, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was in the Naval Sea Cadet Corps for 2.5 years. I was in the Coast Guard for 6.5 months, and then I was in the U.S. Army for 9.5 months. And then after the Army, I went into government work, and I was in the government work for a period of time, let's say.
Ah, okay. So
Not
I'm
gonna
guessing we
go,
can't.
not really gonna elaborate how long, on
Yeah,
that.
okay, no, there's some things that just have to be confidential, and I
Yes, there
understand
is.
that.
I signed NDAs to that effect, and so I honor my NDA. Hell, there's stuff in the U.S. Army that I'm not even allowed to talk about, and that was back in 1980, for fuck's sake. So I mean, there's stuff I can't talk about because I signed NDAs to that effect.
Right. I mean, there's been secrets in the government. People who do work for the government for quite some time. So that's not too surprising. So after the military, I know that you, and of course, because I live in Texas, and so the story about you sort of going into different nefarious areas, we'll say that, and sort of resting the victims of human trafficking from some very nefarious
that's
people.
interesting.
So,
Isn't it interesting that now human trafficking is a big thing, but back in my day when I was actually fighting it, I was called a conspiracy theorist and called an idiot and a liar back when I was fighting against it. So I just find that fascinating. But yeah, now human trafficking is widely known and acknowledged. And of course, back when I was fighting it, oh well, that's just a conspiracy theory, Vaughn. Well, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. And now, I would love to get on here and say that everything I did was a victory, but it was not. Unfortunately, there was many people that I could not save for various reasons. Either they were just too deep into the muck and the mire for me to rescue them, or I arrived too late to rescue them, sadly. And that's just it's unfortunate, but a lot of things can't be helped. I'm only one person. Now, if I had a team of people helping me back then, things might have been different, but I didn't. It was just me, myself, and I. And so, that's tragic, but it happens. You can't save the entire world.
oh, so okay. I'm curious though, why didn't you have a team of people? Because that seemed if people are involved in human trafficking, Vaughn, like you can very well lose your life. So my question is, why didn't you have people to support you in that endeavor?
Because I didn't want to put anybody else's life at risk other than my own. It's that simple. Not only that, but people would have gotten in my way. Accidents could have happened. I could have ended up hurting someone. And I just didn't want that. When I go into a situation, I want to go in there knowing that the only people I'm dealing with are bad guys. Maybe a victim or two, but typically bad guys. So that when something's moving, I ain't got to worry about whether I shoot or not, whether I take it out or not. Now, obviously, you want to try and bring them in alive. Unfortunately, these types of people are not the types of people that are going to go in willingly. So that's just completely out of the question, because I've had that told me, well, why didn't you try to bring them in alive? You ain't bringing in these people alive. No fucking way. You're not bringing them in alive. That'd be like me going up to El Chapo and say, hey, are you going to surrender peacefully? It's not going to happen, dude. It's not going to fucking happen. Okay. Just not.
Well, fair enough. Well, so some people at some point had heard of your exploits. And it's my understanding that these exploits in Texas with the human trafficking, that may not have been the inspiration for a very well-known character in popular media.
Well, it may have been. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not entirely sure when Kirby came up with the idea. I think it was Jack Kirby.
They came up with the Punisher, I believe
it was either Stanley, Jack Kirby, or one of the other guys that came up with the idea. I don't know if they came up with the idea before I was doing my exploits or after. If it was after, well, then I probably was an inspiration. If it was before then, oh well.
Okay, because now you have me very curious. Now I'm looking up the Punisher.
I don't remember the date.
Because I know one of them. Who was it? Okay, it appeared in Marvel Comics, and who is he? Created by Jerry Conway, John Romita Sr. and Ross Andrew. Oh no, this is the newest one. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the newest version of the Punisher.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Punishers went through several incarnations. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, okay. But I outside of that, like there's a rich lore surrounding some of the more supernatural aspects of your existence, which I mean you sort of hinted at. But at some point, a lot of this lore sort of went into some very interesting areas, such as the assertion that at one point you had been a vampire, which is one of the more hilarious stories that I have heard. I've probably heard 3 different versions of that, but I'm sure you wanted to address the vampirism story.
Well, it's funny. It's actually funny. Me and John just touched on that last night in a live show. What it was, how the whole vampire thing got started was that I had done a video on Bram Stoker and how he came up with the idea of Dracula and all that good shit. And so I did the video, and I went into great detail about how Bram Stoker took a real person, Vlad Tepes Dracul, and a real disease, vampirism, and combined the two together to create Dracula. And and then I am, I also mentioned that, hey, bright light hurts my eyes. I'm allergic to garlic. I was born with 4 extra canines. And, and I kind of joked around about the idea of being a vampire. Well, what the trolls done, they took that video, chopped it all up, and made it sound like I was claiming to be a vampire, which I never really did in the video. But they were saying that, and then they got me angry one day. And so I said, yeah, so what if I am a vampire or something to that effect? And so they clipped that out and ran it all over the internet. I never really actually called myself a vampire other than either in anger or just joking around. Now is there, and that's actually a good thing to bring up because, when you have people that have similar problems, let's say, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a vampire. It just means they got problems, But I am indeed allergic to sunlight. I found that out the hard way. I woke up with a dog licking me in the face, and I was covered in boils. So obviously, I drove myself to the emergency room, and so I'm sitting there like, what in the fuck happened, doc? And the doc's like, well, you're not going to believe this. I said, well, try me anyway. And he's like, you're allergic to sunlight. I said, I'm allergic to what? Because I mean, understand, as a boy, I'm out fishing. I'm out boating with my parents. I'm out in the sun all the fucking day. No problems when I was a boy at all. None, zero, nothing. And then for some reason, when I hit my 20s, man, can't be out in the sunlight for any length of time without getting big boils all over me and passing out and shit. And he's like, you're allergic to the sun. And I'm like, that's impossible. I mean, I went boating with my parents when I was a boy. I went fishing with my dad. Said, I don't care. You're allergic to the sun now, and you can't be out in it. So that's just the way it goes, Does that have anything to do with vampirism? No, of course not. Because when I was a boy, I was out in the sun all the time. It's just, one of those things. And one of those things I have to deal with. And, how that happened, I don't know. That's for the experts, quote unquote, to try and figure out. But that's not my problem.
Yeah, I actually had a guy that I was in the army with, and he was getting out of med board. Well, he had cancer, which sucked, but he also had a sun allergy. I had never heard of that. That definitely does exist, and so it's very unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is unfortunate, because like I said, I found out by, a dog licking me in the face, waking me up, and I'm covered in boils. It's like, what in the fuck happened to me, And so like I said, I drove myself to the emergency, and that's what they told me. They said, you're allergic to the sun, and I'm like, that's impossible. He said, no, it's not. It happens all the time, unfortunately. So it's just one of those things. But, bright light does hurt my eyes. I am allergic to the sun. I am allergic to garlic. But, by the same token, I'm also allergic to coconut, which ain't got nothing to do with vampires. Right?
Tropical vampire.
Huh?
I said you're a tropical vampire. That's all that means.
A tropical vampire. Yeah, okay. Very good. Now, if I really was a daywalker, let's take the argument. Let's say I really am a daywalker. If I really was a daywalker, do you think anything would stop me from doing anything I wanted to do? Of course not. Of course not.
Oh, you take over a country?
Well, I don't know about taking over a country because that's too much fucking responsibility, and I really don't want that kind of responsibility. But I mean, could I, maybe make a really nice name for myself and, live a pretty lavish lifestyle with the help of that kind of power? Yes, but you know, obviously, I'm not a day walker. But we'll
Yeah.
get into money here in a minute because, like I said, my parents were well to do, and they were well above average. And that's another thing too. As an upperclassman, as somebody that is upper echelon, for people running around saying that I would let my kids go to school dirty, disheveled, or worse, which is, I've heard it all. Yeah, there's no way. My reputation would be at stake, and my reputation would be completely ruined if I did something like that. So no, I would never do that. Which is another thing. See, if people that actually knew my situation, they would know that there's no way in hell I could ever do that. And my parents would never allow it to happen either. I assure you, they would never allow it to happen.
Right, but
So no.
so you were raised a certain type of way, right? And so to hear these allegations that you would in some way, shape, or form neglect your children, I'm sure was very appalling.
Well, there's no way. Like I said, my parents, there's my parents would have fucking disowned me if I'd mistreated my children. Okay, that's how they were raised. That's how I was raised. You don't mistreat children. Period. End of story. You just don't do that. It's not done. Okay. And like I said, as an upperclassman, as somebody that is upper echelon, it would have never happened. It just would not happen. Okay. Do you think Jacob Rothschild would let his kids go to school filthy dirty? No. What about Donald Trump or Elon Musk or any of these other uber rich people? Would they let their kids go to school dirty? No, of course not. Why? Because they're upper echelon. They're upperclassmen. They would never allow that to happen. Period.
Right.
It
So
just is not done.
when did these allegations first begin, roughly?
That's a real good question, and the answer is I have no answer. I have a suspicion though that they were started by James Arnold Frost, who absconded with my inheritance money and started literally paying people to lie in court. But when that actually started, I can't recall. I don't
And
remember.
these are distant family members, or for the
They
people
are
who are watching.
distant family members that came down here from Ohio. Now, there are Frosts that live down here that are, in fact, closely related to my mother. But you notice those Frosts aren't getting involved. They're staying way back. They're staying out of the picture, and that's because they're smart people. They're smart people. But these Frosts, no, they're distant relatives. They came down from Ohio, and they saw an opportunity to take advantage of an elderly woman, and they did. And unfortunately, that happens in the United States all the time, sadly.
Well,
And
so
it's unfortunate,
but
but it
these
happens all the time. And I'm in the process of repairing that situation.
Well, these are
And
these
hopefully it'll
allegations
be okay.
from people in your real life, but I first became privy to them uh, online. So where did the crossover from in real life allegations into online arena? When did that occur?
Well, yeah, that I can actually answer that truthfully and easily because Ernie Chrysler, out of his own mouth, admitted that he had contacted people in the town I was born in, Hamilton, Ohio, to get dirt off of me, to find out who my enemies were, to find out, who my relatives were, where I lived, and everything, the whole kit and caboodle. And he openly admitted this shit. Okay, so I mean, it's not like I'm making it up. He openly admitted it. Okay, so yeah, that's exactly how that shit got started. He had a wealth of information, because people were all too happy to help him out because some people didn't like the fact that I came from an above average family. Some people were very jealous of that fact. And so, obviously that's going to cause consternation. And, and then there was rivals within the family that I was not privy to. And of course, I found out that information later, but I was not initially privy to it. I am now. There's the death of Homer and Irene Frost, who were good people. What's that all about, Alfie? I think there's some information there. My father died of blockages in his arteries and veins, and the hospital left 100% and 275% blockages in his body. That seems a bit strange, don't you think? So there's a lot of questions about mysterious deaths that need to be answered and dealt with. And, and there's some other things that went on in the family that I'm not going to elaborate on. Florence and Nathan Frost. There's some allegations there. And there's some allegations about the Gentrys and stuff. The Gentrys, though, are good people. The Gentrys are a family of police officers, interestingly enough, and who know me very well and who know that I am not a lawbreaker in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I never will. I have always been the old Dungeons and Dragons term, lawful good. I've always been that way. And, so they know that for a fact. It's not an opinion. They know that for a fact. And like I said, they're a family of police officers. So
right,
can't get no better recommendation than that, right?
So with that, so you seem to indicate that someone online was sort of jealous of your lifestyle and then started working in concert with some extended family members, and so then began sort of a series of allegations against you concerning your kids, which I believe ultimately resulted in CPS getting involved at some point.
Right. Yes, and it's unfortunate because CPS, like I've stated, two attorneys and a sitting judge have come into this courtroom, in family courtroom, and have stated categorically that the women were illegally removing the children from my home, but the judge kept allowing it to continue. Why? I do not know, but he did. But yeah, there was two attorneys and a sitting judge actually came into the courtroom and said, hey, these women are illegally removing the VonHelton kids. See, the only time you're to remove children is if children are in actual, real danger at that time. Okay, obviously a spot of mustard on a blouse is not life-threatening. They're doing my dishes at the sink or doing my laundry is not life-threatening. Okay, a bug in the head is not life-threatening. These things are nuisances. These things might be problematic, but they're not life-threatening, and therefore the children should never have been removed. Okay, so CPS has absolutely broken the law. There is no question they've broken the law. And now that I no longer possess the kids, I can legally sue them into the ground, which I intend to fully do. And so, of course, there's the possibility I may still get the kids back before Christmas, but we can talk about that later. But for right now, yes, I can legally sue them now that I no longer see that people act without thinking. Okay, because I would have done thorough research before I told that judge to give these kids up for adoption. I would have done thorough research on what can VonHelton do to me if I tell that judge to give these kids up for adoption. Well, unfortunately for them, once the kids are no longer in my possession, I can legally go after them in court and sue the absolute dog piss out of them, and there's not a damn thing they can do. I might even be able to sue the judge as well, although he may still be protected. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can sue a judge.
But for sure, I can go after CPS. See, as long as I possess the children, CPS was protected from liability. Okay, that's the law. They're protected. But the literal second that judge says the kids are no longer mine, I can take them to court and I can sue them for billions, and there's not a damn thing they can do about it. Nothing.
Well, this seems to be, let's hold on for a second. It seems to be quite a bit of prejudice against the VonHelton household. And so speaking of the household, at the time you were married to a woman named Andrea. And so she's the one that's the mother of all the children. And so there were some domestic issues to address, and somehow that spilled over into the online sphere. Can you talk a little bit about that before we go into the child issue?
Yeah. The idea that, well, first of all, First of all, there was a troll in Alabama that did not like Andrea. This troll was morbidly obese and probably a butch type individual, female. And she did not like Andrea because Andrea was slim and trim and reasonably attractive. I mean, she wasn't a supermodel or anything, but she was reasonably attractive, more so than this other woman. And so the other woman was trollish to her and hated her and did not like her. And so this other woman started this rumor in Alabama that Andrea was special needs or some kind of mental deficient individual. None of this was true. Now, what is true though is that Andrea was raised by her grandma. Her grandma ruled with an iron fist. Her grandma was very overly protective of Andrea. Andrea even explained to me that she would have to sneak out to go visit friends and stuff because her grandma was so overprotective. Okay, but that doesn't mean that Andrea was a mental patient or that she was an escapee from Arkham Asylum or some shit. Okay, no, it's not true. This was started by one of her haters in Alabama. But Andrea did come up here to be with me. She did not come up here because I had scared her into believing the world was coming to an end or
I've heard that rumor.
Yeah, that's not true. That's not true. What me and Andrea talked about on SinglesNet was children, family, marriage, the typical things that a person talks about. We had, in fact, I don't recall even talking about the end of the world to her at all until she got up here and saw that I was doing videos on it. Until then, I never even brought the subject up. She was the one that actually owned the account on SinglesNet. I was on there for free. So I was unable to do anything on SinglesNet. I had to wait for her to message me in order to be able to respond to her and everything.
Right. So was there any sort of medications that she had to take that she brought with her? I know that was...
No, when she initially came up here, she had no medication because there was nothing wrong with her. There was nothing wrong with this woman. I know, I know this troll in Alabama laid it on thick, that she's this escapee from Arkham Asylum and that she had drugs, of all kinds. It's not true. She didn't come up here with no medication because she didn't have any because she wasn't crazy. There was nothing wrong with Andrea other than she was an eccentric. She was, like I said, she was
abnormal,
controlled by her grandma and that affected her a little bit, made her with certain quirks and whatnot. But she was not a mental patient. No, that's not true.
Well, I mean, that's a lot of younger folks are kind of out there until they really find themselves, because I mean she was really young and youthful, and so I think that might have been people seeing that dynamic, but there is definitely prejudice when there is a older gentleman and a younger woman.
Well, the thing of it is, believe it or not, the real ire, the real ire involved here was not by male protagonists. The ire here was from females who were morbidly obese. You've got a young girl that's fit and trim. She took care of her body. She looked reasonably attractive. Like I said, she wasn't a supermodel, but she wasn't ugly either. And so she took care of herself. She was reasonably attractive. And these women were morbidly obese. They didn't take care of themselves. They were ugly as a mud fence. And so they were jealous as fuck of Andrea, period. End of story.
So they wanted you.
Obviously, they did not like the fact that, I had a reasonably attractive wife. They did not like that. And so they wanted to do everything in their power they could to mess that up,
It seems like they might have wanted you, Von.
Huh?
It seems like they might have wanted you. They could disrupt your marriage and maybe they could take you.
That ain't gonna happen.
That's a possibility.
It's a possibility, perhaps, but I don't see that happening. No.
Okay, I mean that's fair enough.
I have my desires and what I see as here's my thinking, okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, but here's my thinking on it, okay. If a woman doesn't take care of her body, how could I expect her to take care of mine if something happens to me?
Good
okay.
Point, right? I see. Yeah, I mean, you have certain
Yeah.
exacting
So,
standards, for the
and
women in your
that
life.
is, and that is the reasoning that I've had all my life. You
Yeah, I
know.
mean, that's just your preference. I understand. I
Yeah.
prefer, girls who are a little bigger, but to each their own. With that being said, though, so there was already some tension from people in y'all's real life,
Hmm.
and then so you guys get together, and you let her know, hey, I'm VonHelton. I live out here. I come from a certain family that holds certain standards.
Hmm.
Military
Hmm.
folk, real honorable folks. So
Yeah.
here's what I see as far as my family. So when you laid out sort of your idea for the ideal family unit to Andrea, what did that look like?
Hmm. Well, that's the thing. We both mutually agreed that 6 children would be a decent family for us. We didn't want now the haters online say, oh well, you wanted six children because you wanted money or some crazy shit like that. That's not the case. We wanted 6 children because we both wanted a large family. It had nothing to do with money. In fact, we weren't even expecting to get money at all. She came up here with money, believe it or not. She came up here with money. And that's one of the things that was a real problem is that she came up here with money, and the Frost found out that she had money, and that caused a problem because she had money, she immediately became a threat, and we can get into that here in a minute. But yeah, she came up here with her own money. Because the trolls tried to, oh well, you controlled her and you dominated her and she didn't have no money and you was just controlling. No, she had her own money. She could do whatever she wanted. Then now she didn't drive. I would have to take her places, but she had her own money. She could do whatever the fuck she wanted. She didn't. I didn't control her in any way, shape, or form. That's the biggest lie there ever was. She did everything she wanted. She had a good life here, man. She had it made here.
Oh yeah,
She
I
had it
mean,
made here. But we'll get into how the trolls were able to manipulate her in a minute.
right, because y'all had some
Uh,
big plans. I mean, 6 kids. That's that. My mother had four, right, and that was a
well, see,
pretty
the thing
decent
of it
sized
is,
family.
according to her history, not necessarily her parents, but her grandparents apparently came from a large family. My parents both came from large families. My father had 9 brothers. My mom had 8 sisters. So, they came from large families. And like I said, not her parents, but her grandparents, they came from large families. And so, it was just a natural idea, that we would have 6 children and, have a large family. We wanted to have a large family. And the reason for that is because when I was a child and when she was a child, we were pretty much loners. And we wanted to make sure that our children were never alone, that they always had brothers and sisters that they could reach out to and get support from. And so that's why this whole thing with CPS is ultimately very tragic because now they'll bust up these kids and scatter them to the fucking winds. And as Brett Keane has already pointed out, both publicly and privately, he hasn't seen his brother in 56 years because of CPS. Okay, so what these trolls have done to these kids is criminal. It's not just evil, it's criminal because these children are looking at the idea of never seeing their siblings ever again. And these trolls had to know that. Anybody can go on the internet and Google what happens to children once they're put up for adoption. Anybody can Google that. Okay, so these trolls and haters on YouTube did this because they hate these children. And
Oh
that's the
wow.
only answer you can come up with. Because like I said, anybody can Google this information. And well, Brett Keene's situation is rare. No, it's normal, sadly. Sadly, Brett Keene's situation, where he hadn't seen his brother in 56 years, is completely normal because when they get these kids, they scatter them to the winds.
And some
They'll
of
never
and
see their
one they're
siblings ever
twins.
again.
You have twins
Huh?
though, as well, right?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They scatter 'em. They get more money. See, they get more money if they break them up. If they keep them together, they don't get much money. They have to break. Cause see, when you go to when if let's say you've got an adoption business, okay, And this family comes in, they're well to do, and they say, we want a child. And they tell you what kind of child they want. They're not there to buy 3 children. And they're not going to buy 3 children. They're only going to buy one because that's the way the system is. And that's the way people are. People are not going to generally buy 3 children. They're only going to buy one. Okay. So, they're going to bust these kids up. Yeah, they are. Sorry, they are. And like I said, anybody can go online and research this for themselves and see. So these trolls destroyed these kids' lives forever. Their lives are destroyed forever. Unless I can save them by Christmas, their lives are destroyed forever.
Well, before we get into that, Von, it didn't start with the kids, from what I remember. It started with me. It started with you, but then once Andrea got brought into the picture, then there was a little trouble in paradise that the internet sort of picked up on, and sort of that's
and see, that's the thing. What it was, unfortunately, Andrea had to have the twins by cesarean section. There was a problem. There was a complication.
Yeah, my wife had to have them.
And so Andrea had to have the kids by cesarean section, and she almost lost Jerry, but thankfully they did not. But here's the thing, okay? Apparently, and being a guy, us guys, we don't know that much about women's issues. I admit it. I'm guilty. I did not know that much about women's issues. But apparently what happened is that when she had this cesarean section and she almost lost Jerry, it was very traumatic on her. And she went into what is called postpartum depression. Now, once she went into postpartum depression, she started posting on Facebook a bunch of gobbledygook, a bunch of crazy shit. All right.
Like what?
And I told her, I had kept admonishing her, hey, don't be posting crazy shit on Facebook. People will take you seriously. People will think there really is something wrong. And unfortunately for me, she kept posting on Facebook.
So what were the type of things?
And this person named, actually there was 2 people, a person named David Blount and a person named Tammy Alexander got a hold of these messages from Andrea where she was talking gibberish out of her mouth and said, oh my God, Andrea's in trouble. She's going to die. She's being raped, murdered, whatever, whatever flavor of the day was going on, and none of it, absolutely none of it was true. But David Blount and Tammy Alexander took it upon themselves to say, oh, well, first of all, she's an evil pagan and we got to convert her to Christianity. And so they were working with her trying to do that. In the meantime, they were also, telling everybody on YouTube and anybody that would listen, hey, you got to call CPS out there to take those kids because those kids are in imminent danger, when the children were not in any danger at all. It was just Andrea going through postpartum depression and posting bullshit on Facebook. That's all it was. She was never in any danger, ever. But see, she was posting shit on Facebook and everybody thought it was legit. So, to make a long story short, CPS kept coming out. One day, CPS came out, and it was Helen, the head of Clay County CPS, which I thought was rather odd that the manager of CPS would actually show up on my doorstep. But she did, in fact, show up. She came into my kitchen. She confronted Andrea right there openly with me watching, standing right there. And she literally gave my wife a nervous breakdown. Now, this is a woman who's going through postpartum depression. She almost lost her children. And of course, with the head of CPS coming in there dogging her like that, she gave her a nervous breakdown, and Andrea slumped into a pile of bones in a corner somewhere, sobbing and crying, and again, being a guy, us guys, we don't know that much about women's issues. And unfortunately, she had suffered a nervous breakdown as a result of Helen Baker, the head of Clay County CPS here in Manchester, Kentucky. That is a fact. That's not my opinion. It's an absolute fact. And so as a result, that led her on a spiral, which ultimately she snapped because the trolls, instead of backing off and letting Andrea recover, decided it would be fun and that they would get a bunch of laughs by allowing CPS to keep coming out over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then eventually, Andrea snapped. And that's when she was admitted into a mental facility down in Middlesboro, Kentucky for women. Oh, wow. And she stayed down there for a period of, I think it was 2 years or something like that. And that is unfortunate. And that is a result of the trolls. And that is where the medicine comes in, because she had medicine. And I tried to recover her. I tried to help her. I tried to use what limited knowledge I had about mental issues to try and help her out and get her back on the road to recovery and back to being normal. I am on record trying to save my marriage 5 times. And between CPS and the trolls and the Frosts, I was unable to do so. James Arnold Frost literally came out here and sat down on the couch, turned to my mother, and told my mother to call the deputy sheriff out here to arrest Andrea and kick her off the property forever. Now, why? Why is that necessary? Because as long as Andrea is here, it's hard to remove children from a home. When there's two parents, it's very difficult to remove children from a home. That's a fact. But once they got rid of Andrea, oh, well, then it became real easy to remove the kids, because then they could just come in and make up whatever cockamamie excuse they wanted.
Right.
And
So,
that's exactly what they did.
there were issues, Vaughn. I seem to remember before the kids really got involved into CPS. There were certain allegations that I think sort of prompted Andrea to sort of reach out and post things on social media. There's the infamous gun incident in the drawer, and that
Never happened. Never happened.
and so
Never
that's that's
never
one of the
happened.
things.
Trust me, it
Go
never
ahead.
happened. Trust me, it never happened. Okay, that intro to my videos is a skit. It was not real. And if you actually zoom in on the weapon, you'll notice that the top 3 chambers are completely empty. There are no bullets in there. Okay, all you got to do is zoom in and look at the picture. There was no bullets there. Okay, I would never point a loaded weapon at anyone, let alone my wife. I grew up with guns. Unlike everybody else, I actually grew up with guns. My father would sit me down as a boy and watch westerns every day. I grew up with guns. I know how to operate guns. I've lived around guns all my life. I've target shot all my life, and I can assure you I would never point a loaded weapon at anyone. But here's the thing. The funny thing about it is that this whole thing was made up. It was all bullshit, because especially the latest one, the final version, Andrea wasn't even there. It was just I had set the camera up on the table, because you notice if you look at the picture carefully, you'll notice I'm actually pointing kind of downward, and that's because the camera was propped up on the damn table. Okay, so Andrea wasn't even there. But see, these trolls, they have to make shit up, because their narrative is such that they've got to create stuff out of thin air in order to keep the ball rolling, as it were. But yeah, on the final cut, Andrea wasn't even there. She wasn't even there. Now, I still didn't put the rounds in the 3 chambers, because I didn't want to blow my camera up. I didn't want to accidentally shoot my camera either. So I still left the bullets out of the top 3 chambers, but yeah, I mean, if you look at that picture, you can zoom that picture in. There's no bullets in those top 3 chambers. They're not there.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
it
think
was a
people
revolver, see?
sort of highlight the fact that there was just a weapon itself pointed at her, and I think that's sort of where people took issue with it. But outside of that, there was a number of issues that were mentioned just between you and Andrea. The other one in particular was the one where Andrea claimed that you sort of forced her to go sleep outside in the car because you were up. You guys were doing shifts, watching the kids, and during that time you were up, and I believe you were on a live stream, and she couldn't sleep because she had her shift in that morning. And so you had instructed her, hey, you know what, I'm up, go sleep out in the car. And I believe she was scared of bears or something like that.
Well, see, that's another thing that grew legs and got totally twisted out of proportion. Because if you would have watched the unedited version of that live show, you would have seen where I stated that I was the one that had went out and slept in the car, not Andrea. But see, they chopped that shit up and then posted on YouTube and made it sound like Andrea was one that was being told. No, the actual conversation was that I was the one that went out and slept in the car, not Andrea. But see, if you don't see the unedited version of the video, you would never know that.
Yeah, there was the video.
It's just like I said, it's just like the vampire thing. Okay, unless you've seen the unedited version of the vampire video, you would have thought, oh well that crazy Bond's claiming to be a vampire. No, never
Yeah,
happened.
no, I understand, but
It
the
never
issue
happened.
though I think occurred where Andrea did subsequent interviews with people such as the person you mentioned before, and
Right.
then she herself had stated that you insisted that she
Yes.
go outside. So when
Yes.
people
Well,
hear
see,
that, right, they're
I
going to believe, hey, Von Helton told his wife to go sleep out in the car.
right, right. But see, there again, you're talking about somebody who at that time was mentally disturbed, who was going through traumatic experiences, who was institutionalized, and what does that say about someone going seeking out somebody that has mental problems for an interview in order to trash talk their husband? I mean, what does that say about them? I think that speaks volumes about them and not about Andrea or myself. But the point is that no, she was very disturbed by the time they did these Andrea videos. And it was no, she, and then not only that, but you can actually watch the interview. They were actually goading her into saying things and leading her into certain circumstances,
Ah,
and it was just the videos. I have all three videos. They're all, they're ridiculous.
so you've seen the interviews with okay, so
I have the interviews
oh, you
unedited.
downloaded them, okay.
Yeah.
So let's take a detour for a second. So,
Yeah.
one of my favorite Von Helton stories is the time you had to fight apparitions, and you actually
Mhm.
had to banish one particular apparition in your local
Mhm.
area by name, I believe.
Mhm.
So, you want to
Mhm.
go into detail about that?
Yeah, now see that you got to understand these YouTube trolls, most of them are atheists. They don't believe in the supernatural. They think the supernatural is a load of horse shit. And I guess they're entitled to their opinion, but obviously I experienced something quite different. And I had this friend, and this is just as much my fault as it is anybody else's, but I had this friend who said, "Hey Vaughn, I know three words that'll invoke a demon." And, now at the time, I was just as much a skeptic as any of them trolls are. I was a skeptic. I was. I was like, "Oh, you're full of shit. You don't know no three word." And he kept insisting, "Yes, I do. I know these words." And he might have picked them up from somebody. He might have got them from the Rosicrucians or the Illuminati or who knows how he got these three words. But he said, "I know three words that'll actually invoke a real live demon." And I'm like, and he just kept hassling me and hassling me and hassling me. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. We can set it up in my room. I'll get a bunch of skeptics, which I did. I got about 5 or 6 skeptics, and we're all in the room together. And I said, oh, and I did it up good, man. I got Motley Crue's album sleeve, which had a big pentagram on it, and I set it on the ground, and I put candles at
Oh,
all the
wow.
points and stuff, and I put Super Czar, which was a song by Black Sabbath. I put that on the phonograph, and I had it going. So I played it up good, right? Then I locked all my windows and I locked my doors. And now understand the windows and doors are all locked. Everything is locked. And I'm like, okay, now say your three words. Cause I thought he was full of shit. I did. I was a skeptic back then. I said, you're full of shit. And he said these three words. And he no sooner got those three words out of his mouth than this huge wind starts whipping through the room. The temperature drops dramatically in the room. It got extremely cold in the room. The curtains are fluttering all over the place. The wind's whipping everywhere. And I'm like, oh, what have I done? Because I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I done fucked up, man. And so this wind's whipping through the room and it's starting to get really, really cold. And the candles are, they're billowing in the wind. They didn't blow out, amazingly enough, but they were billowing around. And I'm like, I've done fucked up big time. I have screwed my pooch big time. And so obviously I'm still, being influenced by Christianity. So I said, okay, well, I'll try to find a Bible and I'll try to find the Lord's Prayer, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm reading for this. Now, meantime, while I'm reaching for a Bible and I'm trying to find the Lord's Prayer, these two beady red eyes formed in the corner and were sitting there growling at me. And you could smell an actual literal smell. Now remember, the room is full of skeptics. There was 5 or 6 skeptics in there, not just me and him. There was a whole bunch of people in the room, and they all saw this. Okay, but here's these two bitty red eyes formed, and you could hear the growling. You could smell what I assume was sulfur. They kept saying sulfur, so I guess that's what it was. But there was definitely a noticeable odor. And I'm like, oh shit, what do I do? So I'm sitting there, I'm looking through, I can't find the fucking Lord's Prayer. I'm looking all through the damn Bible, couldn't find it nowhere. And it's like, oh shit, what do I do? And I dropped the Bible on the ground. And when I dropped the Bible, it opened up to the Lord's Prayer. And I'm like, oh shit. So I grabbed the Bible and I read out the Lord's Prayer verbally. And I said, but here's the thing that really got me. I stopped being afraid in that instance. I literally stopped being afraid and I became angry.
Oh.
And it was like, what the fuck are you doing in my room? Get the fuck out of my room now.
So once you got the Bible, that galvanized your resolve so that you could.
I don't know if it was finding the Bible and actually finding it open to the Lord's Prayer or what, but I changed. I literally changed. I became different. I became totally different. Because up until then, man, I was just as scared shitless as everybody else in the room. But then something happened. Something got a hold of me, and I totally changed. And I said, you have no right being in my home. Get the fuck out of my room now. And then I quoted the Lord's Prayer, and I said, be gone. And this entity, it dove through the pentagram and was gone and never returned. And then the wind stopped, the temperature of the room warmed back up, and everything became normal again. And so I don't know what came over me that last second, but whatever it was, I don't know, right? You know, the Christians would say, well, it was God getting a hold of me. Well, maybe it was. I don't know. But something changed because I became very defensive at that point and said, you know, get the fuck out of my room, dude. You know.
Hopefully you and that guy are no longer friends because that seems scary.
Yeah, we kind of parted ways after that.
I would imagine, you know, you have a strained relationship.
Well, the trolls are like, well, what was the 3 words? What was the 3 words? Are you fucking high?
Don't say them again.
No, I deliberately scrubbed my mind of those 3 words. Fuck yes, I did. I said, I'm forgetting this shit, and I ain't never going to remember. And I did, too. Now, maybe if somebody puts me under hypnosis or some shit, they might be able to find out what the 3 words are. But for right now, yeah, you ain't getting in there and getting them 3 words. Fuck that. I've lived it. That's enough, you know. And you know, so I mean, you know, I've seen a lot of shit, dude. I've seen a lot of supernatural. Like I said, there's no fucking way in hell I could ever be an atheist. It's just there's no way.
Well, Von, you have to admit some of these stories sound a little outlandish to the average person now. Just a little bit.
When you realize though that there was a whole room full of skeptics there with me, it wasn't just me and this guy. You know, that completely changes the narrative at that point. You know, and all these people, you know, if we could find them, they would say, "Oh fuck yeah, I was there. It happened." You know, I don't remember. You know, it was a bunch of kids from school and shit. You know, we were all just like I said. You know, we were young kids. You know, we're goofing around with stupid shit we ought not have been goofing around with, obviously, right?
Fair enough.
But you know, obviously, I learned a valuable lesson that day.
Okay, you know what? Fair enough. Speaking of which, being a kid goofing around with stuff, you are a gamer like myself. Yeah. You're a big fan of PC games. What are some of your favorite games, Von?
Well, obviously, Red Baron 3D holds a special place in my heart. It's where I coined the name Baron VonHelton, and which eventually became real, ironically. So yeah, that was, and it was kind of interesting because, you know, Baron VonHelton at the time was not a real name. It was a name that I had made up for my character in the game, Red Baron 3D.
Right.
And there was an online version through the Imagination Network, which I don't think even exists anymore, where you could go online live and fight in World War I biplanes against other pilots. And I formed a squadron called JG1, Jadiswater 1, which was a real-life squadron. And I became the head of that squadron. And to this day, in the flight sim community, I am well known and well respected, which is interesting that the trolls never bring that up, huh? Isn't it interesting?
Yeah, well, they do bring up other stuff about your online forays.
Well, I know they do, but we'll get into that in a minute. But the point is that I am very well respected in the flight sim community and always have been. And and of course there was a successor called Rise of Flight, very excellent game about World War I fighter craft. And these rickety old planes. See the different. A lot is well. It's war, yes, but see you got to understand these men in these old biplanes. They were knights of the sky. They were very honorable men, and that's very telling. And it's one of the things that drew me to it was the fact that these were honorable men. They were not bloodthirsty killers. They were not just in it for the kills or anything like that. They were very honorable men, very respectable men. When Manfred von Richthofen died, his enemies gave him a bigger salute than his own fellow German countrymen did. And wreaths were actually flown over Germany and dropped in his honor. These were honorable men. They weren't bloodthirsty killers. They weren't out trying to kill people. They were trying to, defend their homeland, with as little bloodshed as possible. Now, unfortunately, that was not possible. But you have people like Werner Voss, who's his supposed enemies. Mancock and others said he was the most amazing flyer they had ever seen, and a very honorable man. These people were good people. They were not evil people. And I've got a beeping noise. Hang on a second.
I think that might be your smoke detector. Just had my coffee. Okay, I'm muted. Oh wow. There's midnight. What's going on, folks? I see y'all's comments, and I'm trying to pace myself. There's a lot of stuff to get to. There's a lot of stuff. Okay, a lot of stuff. We're gonna have a good old fun time, and y'all owe me. He's still going. Okay. Yeah, I think this is definitely Von's mom's place that he's moved into. Oh yeah. Yeah. So, I am getting to the mods. We will talk about the mods. Trust me, we will get there. No, I'm not asking him if he's getting pegged. Well, maybe we'll see, but we will get to the mods. I'm taking my time. Always fun to watch me whisper. It's a process. I might go live later today and explain to people how I'm doing it. How there is a method that I'm using. I am letting him talk, but he does tend to drone on, so I'm having to sort of cut some of that down. But more so than anything, this is good content for other people to review. So there you go. But yeah, J-Dub's racism. That's we'll see. We'll get there. We want any Alice's clothes. Change his name to Alice VonHelton. We're going to get back into his continued love life, because he and I actually had a conversation about him. We've had a few conversations about him starting his own harem, and that's in relation to what he does in Skyrim. So from the mods conversation, I'm going to go into his real life efforts to create Clan VonHelton kind of as a palate cleanser, and then we're going to get back into a little bit of controversial stuff. So there's a balance. Again, I'll do a members only, and I'll actually explain the process in more detail. He wants to talk. He and I chat every so often on Skype, and we talk about some of this stuff, but he wants to talk. Need any equine terms of bio here? I appreciate it. Appreciate it. I don't think I'll be getting.
Well, that was it's okay, midnight. It was Jackson Energy. They were out to hang some security lights for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you moved recently into Mom's area, right?
Yes, I'm in Mom's double wide now, and which is more of an actual house than what I was in before. I was in that trailer before, and now, double wides are such that they're more of an actual. The layout is more like a normal house than a single wide trailer. The double wides are still rectangular shaped, but the way everything is arranged and laid out is more of a typical house arrangement than what the single wide trailers were
All
like.
right, go ahead, Vaughn, and chat. Somebody's at my front door, so go ahead and tell us about your gaming stuff.
Okay, all right. Well, as far as the gaming stuff is concerned, like I said, I started out with Wolfenstein 3D back in 1980, which I think was just Wolfenstein back then. And I started that out with 1980, and I thought, how cool would it be if I could maybe come up with some extra stuff to make it more interesting, maybe more badder enemies, and maybe some weapons or something like that. So I started modding this game. I was able to acquire the actual files and start looking at the actual files and seeing if there wasn't anything I could do to maybe make a mod or two. And so I did. And so that's one of the things I got started modding on. Was games, having fun modding up games and making them more interesting, and which I did. And so I had a lot of fun doing that. And then, like I said, I got into Red Baron 3D. And, Red Baron 3D was a good game. Don't get me wrong. It was an awesome game, in fact. But I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I could get more aircraft, two-seater aircraft in particular, and plus some other. What do you want? Do you want outside? What do you want, baby? What do you want? You want an outside? This is Midnight. This is my buddy. She's been with me through thick and thin. Ain't you, Midnight? See, I've been with him through the whole thing, just about it, huh? Yeah. Since just prior to my mom dying, Midnight's been with me and been through everything with me, and so she has an ear for what's going on. And she keeps me company. But anyway, I thought, how cool would it be if I could modify Red Baron 3D to accept more aircraft and to accept more pilots and and that sort of thing. And so I started coming up with two-seater aircraft that were flyable, and where you could actually look behind you, and you could have a rear gunner, and the rear gunner would be firing at the enemy while you're flying the plane, and lots and lots of fun having those working two-seaters in the game. I came up with new 3D models for the aircraft so that they would be non-mirrored, because see, the original planes in Red Baron 3D, if you had writing on one side of the plane, it would be backwards on the other side of the plane, because the bitmaps were mirrored. So I had to redesign the planes in such a way to where that they had non-mirrored fuselages, so that when you wrote something on the plane, it wouldn't be backwards on the other side. That was a little bit of work on my part, and but I figured it out. I got it to work. It looked great. And the name of this mod, for those of you that are interested, is called Revenge of the Jostas. And I think the final incursion of that mod was Red Baron 3D Revenge of the Jostas number 3, or maybe 3A, 3B, 3C, something like that. I think was the final one. But non-mirrored aircraft, flyable two-seaters, more pilots, more medals, more, all historically accurate, all thoroughly researched. And so, yeah, it worked out great, man. Had a lot of fun. And, and then, of course, I went on and I did some mods for Doom. I did some mods for Quake. I did some mods for Quake 2 and Doom 2. I started modding other games and stuff. Had a lot of fun doing it. Still do. I'm still modding. I just did French doors for Fallout 4.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just did some French doors for Fallout. I don't know if I can. Let's see. Can I do a screenshot?
If it's an adult mod, we may want to hold off on that till after. But yeah, this just the architecture in Fallout 4. You created custom mods for that.
Yeah, sure have. I've been doing, like I said, man, I've been doing all kinds of cool stuff. You know, I've been making ceiling fans and French doors and new walls, ceilings. You know, because these old shack pieces, they didn't have no ceilings on them, and so I put ceilings. What do you want, baby? So I put ceilings on them, and I put new walls and flooring, and just they look really nice. Now I recently had to discover that I had to remap the flooring for some reason. When I changed the bed map, all my nav mesh went away, didn't it, baby? Yes, it did.
It causes a conflict. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
so I
so,
had to renav mesh all my parts when I did the flooring, but
I mean, you can have some collision issues. So one of
yeah,
the
probably
yeah
did. Yeah, probably did.
one
But
of the
it
most
worked out
famous
good.
I think mods though I think would be for Skyrim, where the Skyrim modding community is just amazing. Some of the
Amazing.
stuff, entire
Yeah,
storylines. They
yeah,
add more voice interaction with your
yeah,
followers and stuff like
yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love
they've got
Skyrim.
whole new realms even that they're working on. So yeah. It's amazing what and and I brought this up before, but it needs to be repeated because it's fascinating. A lot of times in games, especially from years ago, women were always the victim. Women were um, very lackadaisical,
Really, really useful in a lot of
an
games.
afterthought even. And now, man, you got women that are so realistic that it's scary. I mean, they even have those times of the month. They have babies now. They can have PMS even, and
What?
just
They
amazing
have wait,
shit.
Vaughn. They have mods for menstruation in games. I
Yes,
okay. See,
yes,
I'm a
yes.
fan
They
of
do.
adult mods too.
They have
Uh,
mods for bro. They got mods for every. Women have come. It's like that old Virginia Slims commercial. You come a long way, baby. They're not mannequins anymore. They're not victims anymore. Women have made a
the
coming a
Warriors.
coming out of just. They're just. It's amazing. You always hear. Hillary Clinton used to brag about breaking the glass ceiling. Women have done that in gaming.
They've
They've come
launched
a
through
long
it.
way. They've come
Yeah,
a long
I
way.
will. I will
Like
tell
like
you,
I said.
Vaughn. One of my favorite Skyrim mods, and it's just people have heard me talk. One of my favorite Skyrim mods is an adult one called Milkmaid Economy, and that is and by your laugh, I think you're familiar with
I'm
that
familiar
mod.
with it. Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
So, if people who are not familiar with milkmaid economy, so there are women that exist in the world of Skyrim, and you can actually put them on these contraptions to milk them.
Yes,
And so,
and the milk is supposed to be very beneficial to you. It gives you stamina and energy and stuff like that, and help
it's a
improve
buff.
your
It
health.
helps
And
you. It enhances the game. It's just they're
yeah,
on racks and they're
yeah, it's
being
just a game
milked.
enhancement. Yeah, and the thing, but yet, and now see, somebody would take that and say, "Oh, well, that's so demeaning to women." Actually, no, I don't think so. I disagree. I think anything that puts women in the forefront and allows women to get out there and put and like I said, there's women gamers out there that have milkmaid economy and that have all this other shit.
Well, there's
And like
women
I
out there
said,
that like big
there's
titties.
mods out there. There's mods out there that give women PMS now. There's mods out there that allow you to have pregnancies. There's mods out there that allow you to have children that grow up to be adults even. And it's a totally changed environment for women now. Women are no longer victims, and that is breaking the glass ceiling.
Right.
That is a good thing.
Yeah, because that so and with this particular mod, right, women are very, very useful, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
they might be putting these contraptions in milk, like cattle, but fine. They
Right.
provide a
Like I
very,
said,
some good
there's women,
sustenance for the player.
like I said, there's women players that have those mods that have commented on those mods. I talk to these people on a regular basis, and there's women out there, and I've talked to them about it. I said, "Do you think this is demeaning?" And they said, "Nothing is demeaning as long as it allows women to go out there and be who they want to be."
Exactly.
You
Some of
know,
them want to be
and
cattle. Hey,
if there's women out there that are perfectly fine, just being out there and doing that. There's women, you know, and that's the thing. That's the thing about this whole modding community is that it's created so much diversity. You know, if you're type of if you let's say you're the type of woman you want to stay at home. You don't want to go out here and do whatever. You can stay at home. You know, there's actually mods that allow you to do that. You could stay at home and be a housewife, you know,
Yeah.
raise a bunch of kids and, you know, live life as a normal settler back in them days, you
Yeah.
know.
Or they could go out and be a warrior and
Or you
break
could go
heads
out and be
open.
a warrior, right?
Right.
Exactly. Anything, lit, and everything in between. You could do whatever you want. I mean, they've made it to where, you know, the sky's the limit, and there's still mods being come up with every day. New ideas are out there every day, you know, coming up with all kinds of cool stuff, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But I know the trolls would, you know, take some of this stuff and say, "Oh, well, that's so demeaning." Well, I'm talking to women modders and women players all the time, and they don't seem to think so. So,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
depends on the person. I think that some of the controversy comes with some of the mods, but obviously some of them will let you have sex with your
yes,
female followers. And I've watched JD Kane. He has a particular mod where you can model the woman, you can give her big huge titties and stuff, and you can engage in all type of breeding scenarios with your follower. But I think that there was a bit of controversy because a lot of us are fans of that. But evidently, some of the trolls had come across some of your mods, and they were starting to draw some conclusions about that. And in particular, I remember who was it? Sock Account, I think, had raised some
yeah,
concerns. Did you want
right.
to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. I don't do adult-oriented mods, and so let's get that out of the way right now. I have never done any adult oriented mods. Now, I have made followers, I've made female followers who are quite beautiful, I might add. But have I ever done adult mods? No, I'm not an animator. You have to be an animator to do adult mods because you have to be able to position the person to do the things you want them to do, right?
Yeah, you got to get in the
Well, see,
lineup.
I'm not an animator, so I haven't made any. Now, you know, and like I said, I want to make it abundantly clear. Some of these mods that are supposedly demeaning to women are made by female people in real life. These are real women in real life that have made these mods, and so like I said, I've talked to female modders, I've talked to female players, and and they said, hey, if that's what you're into, who cares?
Right. It's
you
all
know
about it's all
and
about preference. Yeah. So
it's
you
all
have
preference, right?
because
But the thing about it is, and I want to make this clear, the thing about it is that it harms no one. That's the thing, it harms no one. No one is being harmed.
right. So I
And
mean, you're
so
having sex with a follower, right? It's digital. It's virtual,
it's
right?
just a
There's no
digital
actual
thing. It's
human,
just
right?
yeah, it's not, nobody's being harmed, nobody's being maligned or intimidated or any of that shit. And let's be clear about it. While it's true that some mods are rather rough, there's also mods that are very consensual and very loving. There's this one mod out there where you give people a hug.
Simple as
You
that.
literally give people a hug.
I think
And
the some of the issue though, Ron,
and I happen to have that mud, and I
right?
happen to use that mud because when you give people a hug, hey, guess what? It's happy. They get happy, and when they get happy, they want to help you. And when they want to help you, guess what? You can actually advance through the game because they want to help you at that point because they're like, hey, that hug felt good. Now, let me help you with this. And so they'll help you. They're willing to help you at that
Yeah,
point.
it enhances the gameplay. So and I know some
Exactly.
of those rougher mods where you can have children as some of your followers too, and so I think that you combine having a mod where a child can be your follower, and then like a
Right.
mod where you have sex with your follower.
Right.
People then kind of begin to sort of go, okay, why,
Right.
what's going on here? And I think that was at
Okay.
the
All right.
center of one of the controversies with the
Right.
list of mods that you had.
Okay, let me address that. All right, because there is a strict policy in that website that shall not be named. There is a strict policy where children are not allowed to be exploited in any way, shape, form, or fashion. That has been a rule from the day the website was founded, It is still a rule today, and it always will be a rule as long as I'm around. And so, no, in fact, I jumped on another modder because when I installed their mod, I ended up with a child's skin on the back of the neck of one of my followers. And it's like, hey, what the fuck are you doing, asshole? Where did that skin come from? Now, as it turned out, it wasn't a mod related to their mod at all. It was from some other mod that had somehow gotten the skins between children and adults mixed up. And so we got that matter resolved. But I was one of the first ones to jump on this modder because I thought they had broken the rules. Okay. And of course I apologized. But the thing of it is, yeah, we police ourselves quite well. Thank you very fucking much. And no, we are very, very anal when it comes to anything to do with children, and we do not allow it in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So while it's true you can have a child as a follower, you cannot use any mods on that child at all. Now, there are mods that allow that child to grow up and become an adult. Now, once that child becomes an adult, well, guess what? Then the adult mods will kick in. But when that follower is a child, you can't touch them. In fact, there's a pop-up that comes up that says you find nothing interesting. So even if you tried something like that, you can't. It's
right. So you've already been over that. Like that's already been, you've already tested, say, hey, once you, I won't say accused, once you engaged or interacted with this person and you saw that, hey, you know, there might have been a texture issue. This is supposed to be a texture for a full-grown woman versus a child.
Right.
You know, it got addressed. And so even if you were to try to carry out the sex with the child, it would give you a pop-up, you know,
yes.
and you've personally seen it. So it's
yes, I've personally seen
okay.
It, yeah.
So I think that, well, let's move on. Let's something a little bit less weighty. There was you know, some feedback that you had given a modder about a particular mod with a horse.
Yeah.
And so part of your job in that particular form was to test mods and give feedback to the mod creators. Right. So did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, you know, like I said, you know, this one was, you know, had horse mods. And, you know, I said, well, you know, isn't it interesting that, you know, female horses are not well represented in either game, either Skyrim or any of the other games. I mean, think about it. Do you know of any female horses in any computer game? I can't think of any.
Yeah, I don't notice too many mares.
And so I said, you know, this is an area that's lacking. And he's like, you know what? You're absolutely right. Because he thought about it a minute. He said, you know, you're absolutely right. I can't think of computer games where female horses have been represented. And I said, you know, there's something that you can, you know, there's a niche right there that you can exploit. And you know, maybe get a good following going. You know, because this guy is an animator, unlike myself. He was an animator. He could make this shit happen. And I said, you know, that there's your niche right there. That you know, that you might be able to fulfill a void that didn't exist. Now, of course, obviously, with the advent of female horses, you got male horses, you got female horses, and so that obviously led to wanting to have calves and you know, or not calves, but ponies and whatnot. And so, you know, so it just kind of took off after that, you know. And so I'm thankful that I had a hand in getting that started. And but you know, but yeah, I mean, how many games can you name off the top of your head where female horses are representative? I couldn't think of any at the time. And you know, and he's like, you know, I can't think of any either. And so boom, there you go. You know, another mod created, you know, that filled a void that existed in the game. And you know, like I said, now you've got horses that are reproducing and, you know, and creating, you know. And so, you know, but it just kind of took off from there. But yeah. Yeah, I can say I was very instrumental in getting that started, and so I'm thankful for that.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, it adds another level of realism, right?
Another level of realism.
You know, I mean, that's rather than just horses spawning out of nowhere. It's like, hey, you know what? Let me bring out this stallion.
And that's the point. You want to try and have realistic environments. They call it immersion. That's the word they use, is immersion. And so anything that produces realism is going to improve your immersion in the game and make it seem more real than it is. Now I don't have a VR headset. I've never used a VR headset. I did test a VR headset one time, a long, long time ago, and I ended up getting vertigo as a result because that was back when it was first getting started. And so I ended up with vertigo there for a little while, and luckily it went away after I'd calmed down for a while. But it was a little daunting. But
I can imagine.
now supposedly in VR, Skyrim and Fallout 4 are just amazing in VR because it's a lot more real.
Yeah, they
But
put
I don't
more,
know.
effort into it.
I've never used that, so I can't say.
Okay,
But
that's fair enough. So, actually, let's sort of move away from that. So, you have been into computer games and stuff like that, and I believe at one point you actually had a bit of a small business going, with computers. And from what I remember, that experience turned quite sour,
Yeah.
quite quickly after you got on your feet with
Right.
that. So, did you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, I had wanted a source of income. Obviously, being disabled, you try to come up with some kind of a source of income. And so I thought, well, I'm real good at making computers, putting them together and whatnot. So perhaps I can, come up with me a way of doing that, making a little bit of money. And so I started doing exactly that. I started building computers and selling them, and started. I started to get a following. I started to get some customers and whatnot. And of course, the trolls saw that I was actually making money and having a good life, and we can't have that. So they decided to hire this woman who posed as a customer and wanted to purchase a computer. And then the woman starts making all these weird demands about, well, it's got to be some kind of special card reader, and there's got to be this, and just making it as extremely difficult on me to build the computer as possible. And so, but I didn't mind. I went, I was very cordial, very polite about it. I went on ahead, made the computer, had to, I got delayed because she kept wanting all this special stuff. So I kept getting delayed because she kept coming at me with some kind of special thing she wanted. And she started arguing about it being delayed. And I said, hey, you're the one that wants all this special stuff. But I endured. I went on ahead. I endured. I built the thing. I've got it all on video that I built it. Good thing I had it on video that I built the thing too. But we'll get into that in a second. So I'm recording myself building this custom computer for this woman. Now remember, this woman is paid by the trolls. Okay, so obviously there's something bad going to happen. So I get it all built, and I get it all shipped out to her and everything. And then all of a sudden, here comes all these accusations that the parts were smelly, the parts were used. And now remember, I've got it on video. I'm sitting there busting open the boxes. All the parts are brand new. I filmed all the parts. She had a better computer than I did, and she had all this extra shit she said she wanted, which kept delaying it. But I endured. I recorded everything, put everything on there she wanted, and she had a dual monitor set up even and everything. And so I got it all done, got it all shipped out to her, and then here comes the accusations. So, the parts were smelly, the parts were used. She didn't. I don't think she ever said any of the parts were broken, which was kind of amazing because that would have been the next shoe to drop. Obviously, it's oh well, the parts were broken and shit. I don't think she ever said that though, but she did say the parts were smelly and used, and that it wasn't working right and all this other gobbledygook. Now remember, I put this thing together. I tested it before I shipped it out. It worked great. Like I said, it was a better computer than I had. Okay. So, I shipped it out to her and everything, and and then all this coming back, and then come to find out, this was done by some guy named Jay Stevio in the Netherlands. He had hired this American woman to pose as a customer to try and trash my computer business.
Oh wow.
And unfortunately, it worked, sadly,
So,
because this tarnished my reputation, and
well, Vaughn, hold
I
on.
lost all my customer base as a result.
Well,
Sadly,
so did you not have any other customers though?
hold on.
Go
He
ahead.
put out a series of videos. He put out a series of videos about it called 1600 Problems, and then he disseminated these videos to all my customers and said, "Oh, look, man, you don't want to buy a computer from VonHelton. He's putting used parts in there and smelly parts, and he totally dissed this woman, and sent all that out to my customers, and so all my customers dried up, and it was unfortunate because as a fledgling company, it was just getting started, and had the company been allowed to keep going, I think I would have been doing pretty well. I probably wouldn't have been a millionaire or anything, but I would have been doing all right for myself.
You had a
But
family
it
to
wasn't
raise.
even given the chance. It wasn't even given the chance to try. That's the thing. It was nipped in the bud before it even got a chance to get off the ground. So,
Okay. Well,
which is unfortunate.
this just one customer though, Vaughn. You didn't have any other customers prior to her?
Well, I had customers lined up to buy, but I hadn't. They hadn't actually made a purchase yet. But
Oh,
I
okay.
had
So
customers lined
you
up.
had, you had prospective customers, but she was the actual first customer,
Yeah,
and then
she
after
was the first
that,
one, and she ended up being paid by a troll to lie and all that good shit. And it's unfortunate. And then,
so
like I said, they emailed all the other prospective customers, and
oh
everything
wow.
just went to shit at that point.
How
So
did they
it was
find
unfortunate.
out all the other prospective customers though? That's nefarious.
Well, that's the thing. When you get online, you can find all kinds of shit online. Apparently, if you're willing to do due diligence, you can find anything on the internet. Apparently.
Oh
So, but
jeez.
they did. They found them. They sure did.
Yeah, man, they got it out for you. So,
Oh yeah,
but yeah,
well, see, that's the thing. That's something we need to back up and talk about,
yeah, we
because
can.
everything that was done to me, my family, and my finances was all pre-planned on Skype, the very system we're on now. Of course, this was back before Microsoft took it over. It was all planned on Skype in advance on what they were going to do, when they were going to do it, how they were going to do it. And I was able to acquire the audio transcripts of that. Someone had intercepted them and had said, "Hey, wait a minute, this is a little bit too much," and made sure that I was given copies of that. And yeah, but yeah, it was all pre-planned, man. Everything that's going on has been pre-planned, all of it. All of it was pre-planned. They set a goal to destroy my finances, to destroy Andrea, destroy my kids, and destroy every time I would get a circle of friends, they would come in, start a bunch of shit, and get it all to break up. These people are just flat out jealous of anything that I try to do.
Because you had plans, you had especially for your family, in which you and I had spoken about at one point, where we were quite open for a long time about wanting to have a big, prosperous family to create
Yeah,
what you call Clan Hilton and help
yeah,
propagate that. And so obviously people in Kentucky are familiar with your family, your extended family, and so you
right,
wanted to carry on that family tradition, which
right,
included, maybe some very unconventional practices, having more than one wife, but with a lot of kids, you would obviously
right,
need lots of helpmates.
right,
And so,
exactly.
with that, there's some prejudice and discrimination that was to be expected. And
Hmm.
so, tell me how Andrew kind of felt about that, having kind of a plural sort of lifestyle.
Well, actually, Andrew was very open about it. She was not. She had no problem with other women being involved as long as she wasn't cut out of the loop, and so she was fine with it. She had no problem with it whatsoever. And because from my perspective, everyone would be treated equally. Nobody would be given preferential treatment. Everybody would be treated equally. And it's so ironic because not long after the trolls destroyed my family, then we see this show come on TV called Sister Wives. Isn't that ironic?
Ah,
And the show ended up being extremely popular, I understand. And so how ironic is that, right?
That's interesting. I mean, the concept has been around for a while, but it's a very very difficult dynamic. And I would imagine, though, the first wife would have some sort of authority, or at least preference.
Yeah. Well, there might have been some kind of pecking order there, perhaps. I don't know. It never got a chance to happen, so I don't know. It never got a chance to see fruition, sadly. And then, of course, you have these stupid, idiotic, ridiculous laws here in the United States called bigamy laws, where if you try to marry a second wife, they throw you in the federal penitentiary with murderers, rapists, and child molesters.
That's
Not
crazy.
even making that shit up.
That's
You
crazy.
are treated worse than a murderer just because you want to marry a second wife. Isn't that crazy?
Well,
That's
if the
insane.
women want you on, then it's like,
Meanwhile, transgendered people are allowed to marry. Homosexuals are allowed to marry. There's a man in California married his dog. But if you want to have a second wife, you're going to go to jail for the equivalent of murder. It's like,
I think it's a bit different when it comes to consent, right?
Who came up with that? Rothschild did. Rothschild came up with that idea. Rothschild, because see, these people, they hated overpopulation. They thought the earth was overpopulated. Isn't it funny that they thought the earth was overpopulated way back in the 40s and 50s, but yet here we are in the 2000s and we're still not overpopulated yet? Imagine that. But anyway, so yeah, they came up with this idea for the bigamy laws, and they got it passed through Congress, you can you imagine the scenario, Dragon? Can you imagine the scenario? You go waltzing into a maximum security prison, okay? And there's this big 7 foot tall, 500-pound bruiser, he's looking down at you. What are you in here for, boy? Say, oh, I tried to marry. I tried to get married. They're like, what? But yeah, maximum security prison for wanting to marry a second wife. Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah, that sounds quite far-fetched.
Meanwhile, like I said, there's a man in California married his dog, And apparently the military can marry now. I didn't know this, but bestiality was passed in California. Did you know that?
I was not aware of that.
And did you know now that what is it when you marry a child? What's the term?
Pederasty. That's, disgusting. That's one word.
Well, obviously, but what? There's a term for that. What was the term? Anyway, it's now legal in California to marry a child. Yes, it really is. Google it.
Dogs and children?
It passed in California. Yes, it did. It sure did. I just read it the other day. It passed in California. I couldn't believe it. I said, "Now wait a minute, that just can't be true." I thought it might have been Babylon Bee or the Onion or some kind of
like a parody,
satire or something. No, it really did pass in California, and it's heading east as it always does. It starts in California and heads east, and so yeah, it really did, man.
That's nasty.
Yeah, well, I don't believe in it. I don't think it's right. But unfortunately, you have elements in this country that want that sort of thing to be legitimized, and I don't believe the gods are pleased with that. But
So we'll get to the gods later, because the unnamed gods is something of a kind of a mystery to a lot of folks. And I know you definitely want to sort of talk and educate people, but. Your ideal family unit would have a few wives and lots of kids to sort of support that. So
it's interesting. It's interesting that my daughter, my eldest daughter, Layla, she had a dream, and I said, she came to me. She said, "Daddy, I had a dream. I said, "Really? And what kind of dream was it, honey?" She said, "I was out in the backyard, and there was all these children playing happily, and I had all these mommies." And I said, "Well, honey, you can't have more than one mommy. It's illegal in the United." She said, No. I had all these mommies. And I said, maybe you're thinking of foster mommies or something. And she said, No. These were my mommies. They were your wives, your female companions. And I'm like, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah." And the yard was full of kids, and they were all my brothers and sisters. And I said, "How did this come to be?" And she says, "I don't know, but I was very, very happy." And so I asked her, I said, well, now how many times have you had this dream? And she said, I've had this dream 3 times in a row. And I said, say what? She's like, yeah, I've had this dream now 3 times in a row. I said, really? She said, yeah, it's the same dream. It's always the same dream. The backyard's full of kids, and they're all my mommies, and the kids are all my brothers and sisters. And I'm like, well, isn't that interesting? So, you never know what the gods have in store. They've got all kinds of things in store. But yeah, she really had that dream.
Oh,
I did a
wow.
video on it even, where I questioned her about it. And so, yeah, she's always had that dream. She still believes in that dream to this day. And so you never know. You never know what the gods have in store for us. So it may very well come to pass. I don't know. That's up for the gods to decide, not me.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
just thought it was interesting. She had had that dream 3 times in a row, and it was always the same dream. And it was
Yeah.
always a happy dream. That's the thing. There was never any arguing or yelling or screaming. It was always happy, all 3 times.
I mean, that must have been a dream, having a whole bunch of women. There's no arguing. Come on, Vaughn. Come on.
Well, that's something that the women could take up with, but no, they were all happy. Everybody. See what it is. Everybody learns. They compartmentalize their work. One woman doing this, another woman doing that, another woman doing this, another woman doing. And so no, there was no arguing, I guess, because they all had picked what they wanted to do, and then they just went and did it, and it all worked out somehow.
Yeah. I mean, before Vaughn, you and I've had conversations about dynamics with women, and so I wouldn't presume that a whole bunch of women are just automatically going to get together, because some of them have strong personalities, and if they don't feel as
Right.
though they're being heard, some women are going to express themselves a bit louder, than others, and so I think that
Well,
is
that's where education comes in. Because see, a lot of people don't know, because the New World Order. Remember, the New World Order believes in depopulation. So they've made it a point that in education and in society that people are not told about polygamy. They're not told that for thousands and thousands of years polygamy was normal and that it was customary for a man to have multiple wives. You don't hear anybody talk about it. Even in religious circles, a lot of people don't even talk about it anymore. And see, that is by design. That is by design, because these elitists, they believe in depopulation. The last thing they want is big families, because big families are hard to control, right? And so, they don't want big families. See, and speaking of which, America was founded on large families. Like I said, my father had 9 brothers. My mom had 8 sisters. They had huge families. It wasn't nothing for the Heltons to have a 300, 400 people family get together during family reunion. It was, and the Frosts were the same way, 300, 400 people at a time. It was not unusual at all. We would have to rent out extra buildings to have our family reunions. They were that big. But see, that used to be normal here in the United States. And see, we've gotten away from that because we listen to these 300 elite families that are filling our heads full of lies about how evil big families are, and how polygamy is just evil and wrong and hateful, and But see, once people are educated and they find out, hey, this used to be normal years ago. There years ago we had this show on TV called The Waltons. Okay. And The Waltons was a TV show about a very large family. The family even had the grandparents living with them. That's how big it was. And they were all in this big plantation-sized house. And what a lot of people aren't told is that TV show, The Waltons, was a documentary. Okay, because we used to have large families like that in this country. That used to be the norm. That was not the exception. The Waltons were not the exception. The Waltons were the norm in this country for a long time. But see, like I said, you have these New World Order types, these globalist types. They come in, they believe in depopulation. They believe in reducing the population of Earth by any
So their
means.
will ends up being what is status quo for the rest of
Because they
America.
have the money and the influence, right? They had money and influence, and they were able to influence the media, influence government, and put limitations and stifle stifle information. But I mean, anybody that's willing to really do some real research, you could probably go to an old library and start doing some research on polygamy and find out, hey, that crazy VonHelton was telling the truth. Polygamy used to be normal.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of cultures that actually, practice that and have,
Exactly.
multi-family households and stuff. But I think one of the key aspects is, though, you can take care of each other as opposed to sort of relying on, the government maybe to take care of
Well,
you.
here's the caveat. Here's the exclamation point. I confronted CPS about this one day. I said, now listen, what if polygamy was legal and I had more than one wife in this house?
Oh.
You know what CPS told me?
What
To
did they
my
tell you?
face? To my face? They said, we wouldn't be able to lay a finger on you.
Oh.
I'm like, oh, interesting, isn't it?
Huh.
Isn't that interesting?
Missing puzzle piece.
They told me flat to my face, said we wouldn't be able to lay a finger on you.
And then you would have a system where, if someone was disabled, someone needed to be taken care of, there are multiple people, multiple adults in the house that can sort of make up for that
Exactly.
without depending on the government or, some other agencies, social welfare programs or what have you.
And if you do some real research, what do you find? You find there was these women called housewives, or not housewives, but
Not doulas, huh?
home. It was something about
Homemakers?
it was a home woman, a housewoman, something to that effect, and midwives and some of this stuff like this. And when you do some research on it, what do you find? You find, oh, well, these women would give birth at home. They didn't go to no hospital. They gave birth at home.
Everything
And
was in-house.
the doctor would come to the house, and these midwives would be there, and these home wives would be there, and then other wives of the man would be there to help these women through their pregnancy. And imagine if other women had been here when Andrea went through her ordeal with the cesarean.
They could have
and
helped
having
care
these
for
women-
her.
She would have been cared for. There would have been other women there that understood her situation and would have been able to have helped her. And then when CPS did come out here and start a bunch of shit, these other women would say, hey, back the fuck off. This woman's been through a traumatic situation. You shut your mouth and get the fuck out of our property. And that would have been the end of it. See? That's why they don't like polygamy. That's why they don't want large families, because large families are hard for government to control. Period.
Right. So, well, Vaughn, on that note, there's lots of as far as people, contributing and helping out. There are definitely, quite a few allegations out there against you as far as why you have not had formal employment in about 30 years.
Right.
And so, how does that play into this? Because a lot of people would look at that and go, well, hold on for a second. Why is it okay for Vaughn not to work and other people have to?
Well, that's the thing. Let's see what the trolls don't tell anybody. These hate videos on YouTube, they don't tell you. They don't tell you that all my life up in Ohio, I work 3 jobs a day. They don't tell you that. They conveniently leave that information out. But I would work 3 jobs a day. I would come home so tired that I would literally just collapse on the couch, set my alarm and collapse on the couch, because, within just a matter of a few hours, I'd have to get right back up and do it all again. I would come home long enough to change clothes and back out the door again, and then I'd have to wait and shower late at night or something. But yeah, I was working 3 jobs a day. Isn't it funny how none of these hate videos about VonHelton ever bring that up? When I first come down here to Kentucky, one of the first things I did was I went and got a factory job at Anvil, making decent money. How many hate videos talk about that?
Not too many.
None of them. Not one. Okay. But yeah, when I first come down here, the first thing I did was went and got me a job at a factory down in Anvil, making electronics, as it were, ironically. These electronic boards, I was making these electronic boards, and when I would wire up the board, then it would go down the assembly line, and then they would put it into the box, and they would hook it up to the box and hook the knobs and stuff up to it, and then it would go on down the. But I was on an assembly line, and working a factory job like everybody else. Funny how there's no troll videos about that. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Now, you say, well, what happened to you? Well, what happened to me is I went outside to get the mail one day. And I'm strolling down to get the mailbox because the mailbox is down by the road. So I'm strolling out there to get the mailbox one day, and I collapsed. My left hip came out from underneath me, and I literally fell down. And I didn't really hurt myself too much, but it caught me by surprise. It's like, whoa, what the fuck just happened here? And so after that, I went to the hospital, and um, my legs started swelling, and my hip was screaming, and my back was screaming. And from that point on, I started going to specialists, and I started going to doctors, and
They did an X-ray?
I could find out what the fuck was going on because my legs were swelling up like fucking watermelons. It's like, what the hell's going on? And I went to all these specialists. Well, is it gout? No, it wasn't gout. Well, maybe it's diabetes. No, it wasn't diabetes. Well, maybe it's this. No, it wasn't that. And so, they went down the list of all kinds of things. And, a lot of them were saying, we can't figure out what's wrong with you. And so I come home and I get on the internet and I put in the internet search. This is exactly what I done. I put in the internet search, one leg swollen more than the other. Now, when I put that in an internet search, what came back was lymphedema. Right off the bat, lymphedema came popping right up. And I'm like, oh, so that's what I've got then. I got lymphedema. So I went back to the specialist. I said, hey, according to what I've read on the internet, it's lymphedema. And so then they done a series of tests and confirmed, yes, it was lymphedema. And even just recently here in Manchester, I went to a doctor and the doctor confirmed, yes, it's lymphedema. You have lymphedema, you have a hip going out, and you got a back going out. All confirmed by a local doctor right here in Manchester. Of course, it was already confirmed by other doctors, but they how things are. They want it confirmed locally. So I had it done locally as well. But yeah, I am disabled. I've been this way for quite some years now. And like I said, I probably wouldn't even have recognized it if I hadn't have collapsed out in the yard. But I did. I collapsed. And then that's when I noticed, hey, my legs are starting to swell up really strange, and started encountering problems. Now, what is lymphedema? Lymphedema is where the lymph nodes in your extremities fill up with fluid, and it
become engorged, and they stay that way.
And they stay that way, yeah. And there's nothing you can do. There is no cure. There is no treatment per se. Now, some of these dunderheads wanted to put compression socks on my legs and force all that fluid up to be around my heart. I said, the hell you are. I don't want all that fluid around my heart. Are you crazy? So I told them to go take a flying leap. But there is no cure. And unfortunately, there are even some terminal cases of lymphedema. Now, luckily, mine is not one of them. But there is some terminal cases of lymphedema. And John is wanting me for a live show, so we need to kind of...
Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this up. So, yeah, we can do a part two some other time.
Okay.
I have plenty of time.
We can do a part two then,
so real quick, you're disabled, you're unable to work.
Right.
It's kind of difficult, though, if you want to sort of continue to have like a family, to continue VonHelton despite the challenges, that would sort of come at the expense of taxpayers, presumably. Such if you were like on welfare, if you could not work. So how do you reconcile that issue?
Well, I reconcile that because, as I stated earlier at the beginning of this conversation, my parents are well-to-do. My parents had their own businesses, their own rental properties, and everything. They were very well off. My mom drove a brand new Lincoln Town Car every year. Okay, that's how well-to-do they were. They lived in very lavish homes. This is not, I was upper class, but I wasn't
Creme de la creme.
I wasn't made into a snob like a lot of upperclassmen were. See, that's the difference. I was allowed to experience real life instead of being pampered and being, put to the side or put up on a pedestal, which is even worse. And so, no, I had to experience raw life and as a normal person. And like I said, I'm glad they did because, the last thing I would want to be is a snob. I just wouldn't want to be one,
I got you.
you know. And but we're gonna have to part two this because he's
Yeah.
mad.
Oh, yeah. That's not a problem. So I would just real quick, one last question. How would you feel about polyandry, having you being one of the husbands just to a central wife? Maybe that could be an option.
Well, here's the thing. I can't find that in history. Okay, as a historian, I can't find that in history. Okay. Now, if somebody is willing to show me some actual documentation from, say, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, Sparta, fucking Phoenicia, Byzantine Empire, anything, but I can't find it in history. See, as a historian, I like to base everything, with something that I can show people and say, yeah, here's where it happened. It actually happened back then, blah, blah, blah. And I can't show that. I can show where men had multiple wives, but I cannot show where women had multiple men. I can't show it. Now, if it exists, great. Give me your documentation. I'll be happy to look at it. But I can't find it in history.
Fair
But I
enough.
can find in history where men have multiple wives. I can find that.
I'm sure it exists somewhere, and we'll have to talk about it later. I don't want to make you late. Thank you, VonHelton, for joining me, and we have to do a part 2 later. Nice having you.
All right. Have a good day.
All right, see you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. So I'm going to take a break, and I will be live on a members only stream, and we're gonna talk about some things. Yeah, so we'll be doing a part 2. You can ask me all your questions. You can ask me all your questions there. There's so much. There's a lot. There's a lot to go over. I will have to talk to our resident sex worker and see where we can set up a time so we can talk about, per profession challenges and all that kind of stuff. But right now, I need to decompress and hope y'all were educated and entertained. But yeah. Feel free to review the shit. Yeah, I had to turn off. So I had to turn off the super chats for that screen because my mic was on, so he would have heard everything, and he is not a big fan of his apprehension even beforehand was that people were going to come in and troll him and all other kind of stuff. So I could see y'all super chats, but because I had my mic on, he could hear it. So that's why I had to turn it off. I usually don't like doing that. But yeah. So oh boy. Anyway, like I say, give me a minute. Todd is sniping the stream that Vaughn is going on now. Todd is sniping it. If y'all want to go check that out, go for it. I need some water and something to eat. Yeah. So anyway, I'll probably do a public post so people get the notification I'm about to go live, and then I'll have the link to members only stuff and all that good shit. So, whew.